So tell me this, Mary Beth. Take me back to 1965, and you and your family and friends are talking about this silent, peaceful protest. Did you know that the school was going to discipline you, or did you think they were going to let you slide?
Well, they weren't planning to until a few days before our planned, our plan to wear the armbands was going to be on December 16th. So a couple days earlier, it came out in the Des Moines Register that the principals had met and made a rule against armbands, black armbands. So there were about 50 kids signed up to wear the armbands, and that dropped down to a handful. I think 7 or 8 kids eventually did wear the black armbands, and 5 got suspended. So I did know that there was a chance of getting suspended. I was only in 8th grade. I was so shy. But I learned later about something called civil disobedience, and this is probably the most difficult thing to explain to students when I tell them about the Tinker story, because there was a rule, and yes, we broke it. Well, as I tell students, if there's a rule or a law that you feel very, very strongly about, you're very morally, you're thinking about this a lot in your conscience, number one. Number two, you can take action about that, but it's got to be peaceful. And number 3, you have to be willing to take the consequences. So kids who are planning walkouts and things like that, I mean, they do need to be willing and ready to take the consequence, because under the interpretation of by the Supreme Court right now, they will be open for being suspended. However, I was reading about a principal this morning, I think in Texas, at Needle something, Texas, who the principal was saying that no protest will be allowed in school. Now, that is not right, because under the Tinker ruling, kids do have the right to protest in school as long as it is peaceful and as long as it does not substantially disrupt school or impinge on the rights of others.
Mary Beth, one of the reasons you've been on my mind is I remember you telling me the story. I have since repeated it to my 12-year-old 1,000 times about how freaked out and scared you were when you were actually called into the carpet. Can you just share that? Because I think for me, it stands for the idea that you only have to be like a little bit brave. You don't have to be the bravest kid in school. Can you tell me what you were feeling in the moment when you got disciplined?
I was so nervous and scared, Dahlia, and my heart was racing as I walked down to the office where I was sent by my math teacher, Mr. Moberly. And then when they told me, the vice principal and the girls' advisor, Mrs. Tarman, told me to take off the black armband, I did that. And there is a lesson there that history is made largely by ordinary people who may have a little bit of courage. And I tell the kids, you don't have to be, Rosa Parks or some great hero. You can just be you. You can be scared, 12-year-old, 13-year-old teenager, whatever it is. Use the little bit of courage you have, and you might be amazed at what a difference you can still make. My father, he didn't really want us to wear the black armbands, but we knew something about my dad, that he had a soft spot for the conscience, because he had lived through World War II and some of his buddies had been killed there. And so when he told us, I don't think you should necessarily wear those black armbands, but we said, but Dad, it's our conscience. And that's what kids now are doing, and the adults who support them are also thinking about what's in your conscience. When do you have to take a stand? And you do, in democracy and in our world today, have to take a stand at times. And that was one of those times for young people. I'm so happy that they are doing that. You
visited Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, right, a couple years ago?
Yes. I went a few years ago as part of my Tinker tour. I was a pediatric trauma nurse, which is another reason I'm so happy these kids are doing this, because there are thousands of people around the country that patch up kids emotionally, physically, in every other way, who are shot and who are affected by gun violence. And I was one of those people. But I left the hospital in 2013 and started traveling the country speaking to kids about the First Amendment and their rights, because I decided that's good for their health also, when they can advocate for their own interests. And as part of the tour, I did stop at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and I had a really good day talking with the students about the things they were speaking up about, such as their music program being cut back, and the art program, and the photography program, and just different things that kids were speaking up about and standing up about, budget cuts in their schools, which was such a common problem as I travel around the country, and it still is today. I was just reading about the higher education funds being cut in Missouri, where my family lives. And I was with some people at Western Missouri State a couple of days ago, and they had written letters to the legislature, and they're speaking up as well about these issues. But yes, I was there, and I was invited by the journalism teacher, Melissa Falkowski, who has been in the news a lot lately, and their journalism program has been so amazing this week, the way that they've stepped up and they've been reporting on what's going on. And in the journalism classroom itself, I think 150 people or so of students were held there safely until, things could be cleared at the school. But I'm so proud of these young journalists, and I'm so happy about kids who are standing up for the free press and who are practicing it in their lives.
You mentioned, Mary Beth, that this is not new. This is of a piece with what minority kids have done around Black Lives Matter for some time. Can you amplify that thought? Because I think for a lot of folks, this all started a week ago. This didn't start a week ago, right?
No, this did not start a week ago. As I said, I've been a trauma nurse, and I started as an EMT, emergency medical technician, and I've been very upset about the violence towards children, gun violence, especially towards children and young people. I'm a member of a group called Moms Demand Action, have been for some time. So our meeting about a month ago before the shooting in Florida, to begin the meeting, we read the names of the people who had been killed by gun violence in Washington, D.C. since January 1st. So I admire young people who are speaking up now, and also so many young people who have been speaking up for quite some time. But now I think it's really a turning point. And it's like when the 1963 Birmingham Children's Crusade happened, and thousands of kids marched and protested in Birmingham against segregation. Martin Luther King said that it was a turning point when those kids did that, and that he had never seen anything like it. And this period that we're in right now with these kids standing up and speaking up about gun violence and the epidemic of gun violence, it reminds me so much of that.
Last question for you, Mary Beth. Did you think even 2-3 years ago, I remember you saying to me, if kids don't exercise this First Amendment muscle, they're going to lose it. Yeah. Did you think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I like to tell kids that as I travel around, and I speak to middle school, high school. I was with some kids in Kansas. The Department of Education of Kansas just had a wonderful program, a few days ago to promote civic engagement in the Kansas schools. And so many kids there were speaking about so many things, whether it was, racist incidents that had happened in their school or their newspaper programs or organic gardening or helping vets or helping animal rights, just so many things. And I like to tell the kids that the First Amendment is it's like your muscles, your 5 rights of the First Amendment: the right to free speech, to the free press, to freedom of religion, and to assemble, and the right to petition. Those rights are like your muscles, and if we don't use them, we can lose them. So that's another reason I'm so happy to see these kids standing up, because we're in mighty times right now when our Constitution needs to be affirmed and our First Amendment needs to be affirmed. And I think these kids are doing a wonderful job of strengthening democracy.